first off, thank you guys so much for coming on. You probably read when I was doing all of the posts and all that jazz about this, but essentially one of my goals for 2021 was to start doing more just community engagement stuff and start giving out some free value to you guys, and seeing what we can do together to help out. I think over the last year, so much shit happened basically, right? So I think we're really in a position where we can help support each other. And so hopefully over the next 12 months, we'll be doing one free webinar every month with a guest speaker on each one. Ranging a massive amount of topics, but I think they all can be really closely related to each other and help our businesses grow and things like that, and make sure that 2021 is an absolute kick-ass year. So make sure that you catch up on all the rest of our webinars. I'll be announcing them over email as well. So yeah, today it'll be me, Terry Williams. I run Clever Fox Creative. I'm also a designer. I do branding and website design. We've got the kick-ass Damien Ferner.
Hi guys. Hi everyone.
Who is the founder and brand strategist at The Forward, which is an amazing company we've been working with really closely. And then Nick Timms, turn your camera on. Nick is a designer at Clever Fox Creative as well. Many of the people in the chat will know Nick, and he's going to be asking questions via Slack to me so that I know what people are asking, because it's very hard to share my screen and engage with you guys at the same time. So he's going to be my aid in that. And so, yeah, make sure that anytime you have any questions, just drop them in to the Q&A little icon guy at the bottom of your screen. That way, every time we stop, we can have a bit more of a chat about it. And so how to build a brand. So who is this going to be good for? So I really wanted to help out people who maybe they've already had an established brand and they're not sure if that now aligns with where they're at in business. So oftentimes what'll happen if you've been in business in a few years, and so much has changed over the last year. We know how much you've had to pivot as a business over the last year as well through COVID times. Or maybe people who are new in business and you're not sure where to start and how to create something really amazing that truly represents what you're all about. And then also business owners who haven't maybe tied down exactly what their brand is and what their strategy around their brand is. So if you're any of these three and you want to share, drop it in the chat. We'd love to know where you're at, what stage you're at in business as well. And yeah, so as I mentioned, the whole time through, we're going to stop after every section that we're chatting through. We're going to stop for a question time, and either Damien or myself, depending on what your question's about, will be able to answer your questions, and make sure anything, it doesn't matter what it is. And if you did want to ask anything anonymously and you didn't want us to let you know who's asking the question, you can always drop it in chat to Nick, and Nick will just share it anonymously with me, and then I can answer or Damien can answer, and that way you can get all your questions answered. And we will share some more answers. If we run out of time to answer anything, we'll make sure that we get back to you with it through email. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to hand over to Damien in a second, but some of the things that we're going to cover today is what brand strategy even is. Oftentimes we hear branding and we hear logo, and rather than the strategy behind that. So let's getting into the basics of that. Some of the brand strategy principles, so your golden circle, what your brand values are, your vision statement, your mission statement, creating a cultural framework around your brand, your business personality, and then I'm going to have a bit more of a chat about the visual identity and how your brand strategy essentially translates into your visuals. So I'm going to hand over to my man Damien over here. Damien, can you control the screen by any chance, mate?
Yes, I'm on, mate. So, Terry, thanks so much for the warm introduction. And to start off with, thanks for everyone for giving up their time at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon to talk a little bit of brand strategy and discuss really the essence around getting to your brand and the critical factors that support that. Terry, wonderful initiative, clearly something we're happy to support and be a part of, promoting a social cause such as supporting Skylight, mental health, and I guess the initiative of supporting mental health is something we're more than prepared to rally behind. So thanks for coordinating today. Everyone ready to get going? So brand strategy. Oh, Oh, hang on. Okay, so one before. So what is brand strategy? I mean, we often get thrown what is brand, how does brand work, how do we coordinate all the elements to brand? In essence, there's generally 3 levels to brand or strategy, and brand sitting at the top of that. I guess the objective is to create alignment and synergy across all levels of strategy. So the quickest way for us to talk about the essence of what you do and how you do that is to understand the people behind the brand intimately. So the system and model that has been tried, proven, and tested, actually pioneered by a gentleman, Simon Sinek, who is a guru in this space. He formulated this model called the Golden Circle, and on your screen you can see 3 levels, which speak specifically to the 3 levels of strategy, which is why, how, and what. It's very much rooted in biology and neurology. So it's the way that us as humans react to core emotions and how we feel about something is generally a key indicator to our decision-making criteria. So in business, our objective is to really try and create those emotional triggers and associations really early on in the customer journey to finding out who we are, so that we can align at a values construct, because ultimately what we want to work with people for the right reason. That's where happiness, fulfillment, and joy is all encaptured. So we feel that the Golden Circle encapsulates that perfectly. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into that modeling. So why? I mean, creating a brand vision, or the essence, is, as I said, centered around triggers and emotions and the motivation that sits behind buyer choice. Buyers are not the only key stakeholder we want to talk to at a brand level. The majority of the research coming out at an enterprise level is to try and talk to our key stakeholders, which are our employees, because creating a compelling vision behind a brand actually allows everyone in the team to rally behind the vision. Now, traditionally, when we're starting a company, the vision's often found or created by the founder or the visionary. And it's often encumbered by a lot of passion and a lot of desire and a lot of emotive drive to create change and push change into the marketplace. But translating that across the employee base or the network of groups and suppliers that we may work with is somewhat of a challenge. So getting to the emotional trigger point of why the brand exists in the first place is very much the first place to start. It can be a very challenging concept, digging into why, because we have to delve deeply into the personal values constructs of people. And Terry, you and I have spoken extensively around literature around Brene Brown, and the willingness to feel vulnerable, particularly at a business level, is very challenging. Our values are something that are forged and created by the things that we lacked or never really had, because that's what causes the emotional trigger and the motivation. So to be able to divulge something that we don't possess or something that we want is generally a vision. And that vision should be encapsulated by consistencies across the stakeholders in your team. So if you're working with a small team, it's what are those consistent touch points amongst everyone that we can all rally behind. There's definitely an art and science to unlocking your brand vision. That's why I would strongly recommend looking closely at your personal values construct and why you exist, what your purpose is, and the difference that your brand makes, which is very much part of an identity and very much part of the subculture. So I'll move forward into the next layer. So I sort of spoke to, I mean, one overarching statistic that I think is really compelling is that at an employee level, 90% of people out there are currently unaware of what their company's vision statement is. Now that's chaotic if we're all trying to row in the same direction. And if 9 out of 10 employees that are working with you have no idea of the direction we're going in, then that's going to make it hard for us to rally to get behind that message. So the next layer of the onion, which is how, and I'm going to speak to why and how extensively here, is about how we behave, how we interact with each other, how we respond to change, how we're innovating, how we're growing, And so much of that is captured at the behavioral level. So you can see that there's a little gut icon there. And the neurobiology, which I find fascinating when it comes to branding, is we have this gut brain that is intuitively picking up information, and it's sending that information straight up the nervous system to our limbic brain, which is the emotion making center of our brains. And often intuitively we feel a particular way about a culture or a brand, and how they may interact or what their reputation may be. Being able to understand how the organization behaves in alignment with the cause or the purpose, which is the why, I think is the essence to getting great brand strategy, because we can set really clear goals and objectives and timeline, and set clear timelines around how to manage the human performance element behind the brand. And I'm a classic sucker to, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And so being able to align on, I guess, our why values, which is why we exist, our purpose, core values, and then how we interact and behave with one another, is very much going to be consistent with perhaps our customers' brand experience of us and how they interact with us and what our promise is to the market and how we deliver on that service. I'll move on. We know that's critical because, 76% of job candidates reveal they want a job where they feel their work life matters and has meaning to them. So as I said, that meaning-making machine, the brain and gut, the intuitive level of the limbic system, will actually associate all of those core values and core emotions to a brand. Now, as Terry said at the very beginning, if you're unsure of what they are and you're unsure of what your purpose and vision truly is, and therefore how that's translating to your staff or even your customers, using the golden circle is a really powerful mechanism to be able to identify and bring everyone onto the same page so that we can walk in the same direction. Now, typically, we all know exactly what we do, okay? What we do at the Forward here is we create content. We specialize in video, but that's definitely not why we exist, okay? We exist very much along the concept of what Terry stands for, and that's making a difference in the community, and that's being able to support other brands in their cause to be able to take great content, purpose-driven content to the market so it cuts through. But sure, we deliver that in video, we deliver that in social content, we deliver that in brand content, but it's very different to why we do what we do. Okay, now what we do is actually very much part of our neocortex, our thinking brain, and this is where we rationalize all of our thoughts and where we sit back and can actually create measurement and outcomes, products and proof. And ultimately, the objective of most brands is to innovate and create change. So what we do can evolve and change. That can be simply different product lines or different product line extensions or different service criteria. But how and why, which is the limbic brain, the emotive making center in our neurobiology, that's the critical component to unlock behind brand strategy. Now, if we get that right, the ultimate measure to this is how our employees support the mission. Now, the mission of your company or your organization is very much centered around what you do, okay? It may be a bookkeeping service, it may be an apparel brand, it may be building websites. But we know that if we can align employees to the mission and they're very clear on that, and we have an overarching vision which is tapping into the emotional cortex, that translates to improving customer satisfaction. And when we can measure an improvement in customer satisfaction, we can grow loyalty amongst our audience, which is very much the strategic intent behind why we would structure a brand, to grow loyal advocates, okay? Now, there's a lot in that little 5 minutes. I'm hoping that there's some questions that we can sink our teeth into. Has anyone got anything? Not yet?
Not yet. Make sure if you guys do, like, even if it's something that we've just spoken about, do still drop it in there anyway, because we're going to stop a whole bunch of times. So yeah, we'll carry on, shall we?
Yeah, I did just see a quick question up. I'm loving all the neurology. Look, it's the actual side of branding that fascinates me as well, because you can imagine having a very clear framework of how an organization, or why an organization exists, how our people behave, and a very clear understanding of what we do. It makes it very, very enjoyable process to come up with some creative briefs that surround that. And that's where we're going to start talking around the next topic, which is effectively how to find your values and how you guys can do this on your own. Now, clearly, we facilitate the process at the forward before we go into creating any content we believe that it should be benefiting the brand. And just so I'm clear on that, developing a brand should be focusing on its short-term successes, so revenue now, but the long-term health of the brand over time. And we want that to increase throughout the years, which is very much centered around the vision. Now, when we delve into the heart or the values construct, I just want to put a bit of a word of warning in there. It can be very confronting for certain people. It can be very difficult to identify what your core values are, and it can be somewhat emotionally challenging. So there are lots of tools online that you can delve into that allow you to facilitate this process. I think my biggest piece of advice at this stage, depending on whatever life cycle you're in your business, is go into it expecting to uncover key insights. And it's very self-reflecting. And in that self-reflection, we actually find what our cause and purpose is and really the value we bring to the world. And what you find in that process is other people are trying to do the exact same thing. And they should be the people that you align with. So in perfect example, Terry's brand at Clever Box and the Forward are very, very synergistic in our core values. So when we look to work, we look to put people before profit. We look to create solutions for people that are measured way beyond the financial bottom line. We share the same value constructs there. So we work well together, and it's all about collaboration at that point. There is just a word of warning that it can bring up past hurts, pains, and sacrifices, but the majority of the outcomes will be fulfilling and a rewarding process. So I strongly recommend delving into it. Now, creating your vision statement is often very difficult because it needs to be consistent with everyone in your team. Now, we often refer to vision as the North Star, or the emotive cues that, or the triggers we press that aligns everyone constantly, and we have to continually come back to our vision because it changes. So good brand managers will obviously look at reviewing that quarterly. Once they generally get set and they know that that's the direction that the business is going in, they generally look at a review half yearly, and then they push that to a yearly. Copywriting your vision needs to be really, really well thought through, because you need the words to represent the emotional triggers, because it's not about what you do. It's about why and how you do it. Coming up with a mission statement is a lot more pragmatic in that you can speak more to the mission at hand, what our quarterly objectives are, what our monthly sales objectives are, what the mission from production level is, what our service criteria is. This is where we get down to the nuts and bolts and look at key elements that we can measure and manage ongoing that speaks to the purpose and speaks to the vision of the organization. And if we all rally and achieve those goals, it should enhance and empower the culture, which is the strategy behind brand in my eyes. Culture is strategy. So if we can enhance and empower the team to carry the vision of the brand, we can grow. And I think that's the key metric that people want to come back to. Constantly, it's who I'm dealing with on a daily basis. It's how we measure growth. So questions, next stage.
Yay, we do have a question. So someone asked who the author was that you mentioned, which I think was in the section before what we've just done.
So yeah, it's Simon Sinek. Very, very popular author. He actually created or wrote a book called Start With Why. He speaks to the nth degree on the neurobiology connections on how we make decisions and why we make decisions. I think an overwhelming statistic there is 90% of consumers will buy why you do what you do, not what you do. So having a very clear purpose, having a very clear vision statement, And bringing that to life will actually engage your core stakeholders far more than product and price.
Yeah, definitely. And someone else has asked, Sam asked, is a mission statement more aimed at internal teams or external customers? Sorry.
Can be a combination of both and very contextual to the company you're in. I think a really well articulated or copywritten mission statement would speak to both audiences. I tend to blur the lines between employee and customer because there's so much overwhelming research out there that says once you treat your employee well, they're bound to treat the customer exceptionally well. Employees, in my mind, are the number one stakeholder today in organizations. We know if we take care of them, they take care of customers. So, direct answer to your question, I believe that it should address both stakeholders, the mission statement. And ultimately, we want to build social proof. So if customers rally around that mission, it's a very good outcome.
Awesome. And one of the other authors that Damo was talking about as well, just super briefly, but you should also look into her, was Brene Brown, who's an author that speaks about vulnerability and leading through emotion, and how to get people to rally with you and rumble with you as well. So what I plan on doing, guys, I shouldn't say plan, what I will do is that I'm going to send out an email after, and I'll send you guys some resources, so some videos from Simon Sinek, and some other things I'm going to talk about a bit later as well. So yeah, keep dropping your cues in the chat. Otherwise,
thanks guys. Great questions, and much to the same point of what Terry said. If there's anything specifically that you're looking for, please feel free to get in contact with me. More than happy to support. This is about supporting local communities to do better. Okay, so bringing it all together, I mean, we look at this big lofty vision and we try and articulate the mission statement. But if we look in the inner ring, which is the how, which is where I tend to occupy 90% of my time, how we bring a workplace culture and a framework together is often defined by a series of elements. And I think this is a really nice little drawing that, or design Terry's come up with for us. It is a cultural framework. It is based on rigorous analysis and research. It's been done by PhD students right through to Harvard. Now, there are generally 8 key elements of which a culture tends to work within. Through my experience, most businesses have a combination of a few. It's generally only 3 or 4 at max that we tend to see a dominance in. And some organizations are simply dominant in one area. And that's where we think just if you occupy and own that space, become the authority through that. Now, when you're uncovering your values and you go through some self-reflection, and then we look at what we do, how we bring that together and how we align our internal team members, being our employees, is we want to survey what our people care about. And we know that 74% of them want a place that provides meaning, fun, fulfillment, enjoyment. So you can begin to see that a number of those key values are plotted on this graph here. Now, I know it says stability, independence, interdependence, and flexibility as the benchmarks. It's more related to how we interact and how we respond to change. Okay, now how we respond to change is a critical one because we're living in a very, very, very unique time, and change has been thrust upon us whether we like it or not. And it's happening at such rapid frequency that we need the tools to be able to adapt quickly, because as a marketer, we're constantly looking for opportunity and opportunity to exploit. So if we're a results-driven organization, if we pride ourselves on enjoyment and learning, purpose and caring, order and safety and authority, that should speak consistently with your brand strategy. So if we were able to articulate a very nice vision statement that aligns everyone, and then we're able to say, and we get there because we're a culture based in learning, results, and care, it aligns everyone to how we interact with one another and creates a sense of benchmarks and social norms. And when we can create normal behavior, it's often referred to how things are done around here. And culture is very difficult to measure, insanely difficult to measure. So if we can create some key benchmarks, we actually have a tool to come back quarterly, half yearly, annually, however you do your measurement within your business, to ask some hard questions. Did we move to more enjoyment? Are we fostering an environment of learning and innovation? Are we living out our purpose? Do we care about our people? And it's a real prompt to be able to align everyone internally to say, this is the direction we're moving in to achieve our vision. And it's a very powerful tool if you're able to implement it. The challenge always comes at implementation. But again, it doesn't get more complex than this. There's generally only 8 elements that an organization will work within. And I think that's a really nice framework to draw upon. Okay, just wanted to provide an example. I'm not going to give the name and the business and the analysis of what we went through here, but this is one that we've done recently for a brand, and we could see that, and we did a survey across their executive team, so their leadership team. And when we're talking brand strategy, we want to align all those key players. And we could see that they all aligned on purpose, learning, and you can see results and caring came in third. So we split them. Now, back at the framework image, I said we generally want 3 because it's much more digestible and simple for people to understand. But in this particular case, they tied on results and caring. So what we're able to do now is infuse those message tones through the brand, through the employees, and able to measure that against the brand objectives, which is the strategy. And because we can measure it, we can manage it. And again, we will come back and do this quarterly for this team to ensure that we're moving more toward purpose and learning. I'll give you a key insight. Innovation was the core gap that we identified at the top, which is their why. So having an organization driven by purpose and learning was consistent with the gap we spotted, which was an innovative brand positioning. So again, an analytical tool to be able to justify why we're making the decisions we make, how we're making the decisions we make, and what decisions we're making. So I constantly come back to the golden circle because it's a really, really simple framework to start off developing brand strategy. Okay.
Hey, that was awesome. Okay, so we got a couple of questions. So the first is, are you able to give an example of a good mission statement?
Sure. A good mission statement. I've got one sitting right here. This is one that we've written recently. An advisory service that helps growing businesses automate and scale to achieve long-term financial success. Now that's mission because we spoke very much at a product level, we spoke at an employee level, and we spoke at a customer level. Whatever audience would be reading that would get a very clear understanding of what that business does.
Yeah, nice. And the second question is, should the vision statement be made by the owner alone or as a team?
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. Just going to predict that your growth objectives would be to grow your brand. And by growing your brand, that probably means market growth. It also means talent acquisition, so bringing the right players to your team. We know a core value construct that inclusion and community and human connection are very powerful motivators. And my belief is if you bring in your team to the wide decision level making, they'll have more buy-in. And so your objective is to get more players to rally behind your vision so that you can bring your vision to life and grow. So personally, I would involve key stakeholders or key decision makers, people you trust within your inner circle, to help you articulate your vision statement, because they are the emotional triggers that we're trying to align internally and externally. Those brands that do it well have dominant market positions for a reason. They understand this process intimately. I hope that answers your question.
That was awesome. Okay, cool. And then just one last one. So what are some ways a mission statement can be kept in the minds and front of the people that work for the business?
Yeah, another really, really good question. And I get this one a lot. This is very strategic. So at a market level, when we're looking at competitors, often we'll look at web pages, we'll go and do a digital analysis, and a lot of brands these days are in a hurry to share what their vision and mission is. But that means that every other competitive brand can see what your vision and mission is. I believe personally that there should be an internal vision that aligns the core stakeholders, that brings everyone on the same page to achieve the internal goals. I believe there should be an external version of that communicated to customers. I also believe that at a very, very, very core value level, and I take this from Apple, whilst Apple were very well known for challenging the status quo, we don't actually ever know what their core values are, and we don't know how they're driving their organization, because they don't want the likes of Huawei and Samsung and their major competing brands to know exactly what drives the brand intimately. So my answer is in two parts. I would have a personal set that aligns the C-suite or the corporate team to your objectives without question. I would then have an external vision and mission written for your employees and your customers. They should align, but they should be slightly different.
That was a great answer. Sweet. That is all the questions that we have. If you guys do that, oh my Lord, that is some in-depth information. So if anyone does have any questions later down the track, you can ask, even though I'll be talking about identity, but we can go back to Damo and he can give us some answers around some brand strategy side of things. But otherwise, Damo, is there anything that you would like to add before I carry on to the design side of life?
I think just as it feeds into the next stage of the webinar, the biggest challenge facing brands today is to stay consistent. And we know that we can't predict what touch point your consumer will find you. But if it's consistent across all touch points, they're probably going to have a similar experience. And if that experience is centered around why you do what you do, you're bound to take market share. So that would be my advice. And enjoy the process of uncovering the purpose. It is literally the meaning-making center of the brain, and I find it fascinating. And good luck. If there's any particular way I can help, please at any time shoot me an email, ask a question. I love this stuff. So I wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Thanks so much, Damo. Me and Damo could talk about this stuff forever, guys. Seriously, honestly. Awesome. All right. Yeah, seriously, the purpose is the core of everything, whether it's design or strategy or business, and personal as well. So we always got to come back to that. And whenever you get a little bit iffy about where you're at, just think about why you're doing it to begin with. And I think we can find a way out of it. So yeah, everyone say thanks, Damo.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
So all right. Oh, shivers, I completely forgot there was this section.
The last
Sorry, Damo, this is
no, totally. Okay, so
carry on.
No, I think this actually is the perfect segue. So let's hypothetically say we know exactly why you exist. We know exactly how to pull your team together to make your dreams a reality. The other element that should be authentic to the brand is your personality, which really brings the players to the forefront within. And we want to celebrate people's personalities and have a place where they feel included and feel valued. So there are really great frameworks that we can rely on in terms of finding your brand personality archetype. And I think this chart that is representative of that, well, the idea is your vision and your mission and your cultural framework overlays perfectly to your brand archetype. And this is the lens of which creatives such as Terry and her wonderful team looks at how to be able to bring your brand to life, which comes to the narrative, the storytell, the imagery. And Teza, this is where you take over because it feeds perfectly to the next stage.
Awesome, thank you. I'm such an idiot.
No, perfect.
Yeah,
no
I'm always
drama.
5 steps ahead of where I think I am. So, all right, never mind me, guys. Yeah, thank you so much, Damo. You are an absolute culture king. So, all right, so we're going to move on to, if anyone does have any other questions, chuck it in the chat and we'll go back over it. Otherwise, we're going to move on to visual identity, which is my jam. Now, a few people in the chat know me and have watched me speak before. I swear to God, I'm going to try and not ramble, okay? I can do it. So when we're often talking about branding and things, what generally comes to people's mind is logos. And so when they say, oh, I need someone to do a brand for me, they're mostly just talking about the design elements. But as Damo's just gone and outlined, it's so much deeper than that. There's so much involved, and there's so many things that we really need to really closely consider, because you don't want to be rebranding in another 2 years' time. You know, it's an extremely time-consuming process. And you may as well do it right the first time. So we can go a bit further into what that looks like visually. So once you've got that kind of strategy down pat and you really know what the purpose of your business is, what you want to be achieving, we can then go and find ways of making that more of a visual representation, and mostly around the emotive side of things. So that's all about taking that strategy and making it into something that's more tangible, outside of the emotions and outside of the customer experience, something that people can see and feel visually. So what does that include? So when we go to the absolute basics of visual identity, it's all about the core elements. So your color and the psychology around color, and how color can immediately draw people to certain ideas. We go into typography, so your fonts and things like that. What images you want to use, the form and space that you're using when you're creating your branding identity, things like iconography, use of space, layout, and things like that. All of those things are absolute core things. So even though they seem very simple just from surface level, there is so much, I guess, like psychology and story behind these things in terms of colors and stuff like that. So let's go straight into colors, which is, I love colorful everything, so let's go into it. So hands up in the chat, maybe not hands up, but pop in the chat if anyone's heard of color psychology before. So Nick Timms raised his hand, obviously designer. Cool. So color psychology. So basically, to give you a bit of an example, when we're going through a supermarket, right, and you're looking down the aisles and you see some branding, you see some package design, for example, and the packaging has got some green tones to it. Despite the fact that you may not know that brand, what generally will come to your mind is that it may be a natural product or it may be an eco-friendly product, whether it is or isn't. And that's because there's a lot of psychology behind coloring, and this is why people really consider what they're going to be using when they're creating their branding, because it's creating those neural pathways, I guess, between what people see and what they expect immediately. Some of that is because of societal reasons we see these things and we immediately think, you know, this is where it's connected, and just the psychology behind colors as well. Colors bring out certain emotions in us. So for an example, yellow is my favorite color, as we were just talking about in the office, and it's my favorite color because as soon as I see it, it makes me really happy. It's a really, really cheerful color. We think the sun, we think sunlight, we think all of the happy feelings. My first ever car was bright yellow for a reason. And so that's the psychology behind that. When we see yellow, we think of happy colors and happy things. And when we see reds, for example, we see like a really strong color, something that's really passionate. When we think roses, it's normally red roses because that's a passionate color. When we see green, like I was just explaining, we think natural, we think eco-friendly, for example. And then that relates to other colors. So when we think purple, we might think ambitious, you know, innovative, luxurious, and even getting down to the absolute basic colors. When we go into blacks and whites, we might think super sophisticated. You know, when you're thinking about white, you might be thinking about innocence, purity, doves, for example. So these are all things that we just witness, notice, experience through our life, that we just automatically connect to these concepts. And a lot of the times we don't know why we connect them to their concepts, but as a core human level, subconsciously we do it with everything, and that comes back to branding. So here's a couple of examples that I came up with. So some of those keywords that I pulled out originally from the red is exactly what Red Bull is. So you think energy, I mean, it's an energy drink, right? So they've chosen the perfect color for it. You think excitement and strength. You've got the bulls, which then doubles down on that, backs up the whole concept and the emotion behind the branding. So that's a really good example of where color connects deeply to the core purpose of the product. And then in terms of greens, the eco-friendly side of things, I was just talking about as well, we think of the eco side, we think of the natural side. So Whole Foods doesn't exist in Australia, I don't think, but I'm pretty sure most of us know what Whole Foods is. So Whole Foods is obviously an entirely eco-friendly whole foods place. So when you see it, you're immediately connected with that concept that it is a natural product, it is a natural store. And then that can be twisted. So we've got BP on there, which if you watch the news, you know that they're environment killing. But when you look at their branding, you could almost say that they're carbon neutral, that they have like an eco-conscious side of their business, even though they don't, because of the fact that their brand looks so fresh and natural and eco-friendly. And that's where that psychology can be twisted for certain brands to give the idea that it might be eco-friendly. Just, by the way, don't do that. Be honest with your branding. But this ties back to the core issue that I'm talking about, right? So despite this, color is still subjective regardless of this. So even though red, we know that it's passionate, some people may see it as strong. So you need to be really careful about who your target audience groups are. When you're doing that kind of brand strategy, you should be thinking about who am I actually targeting, who really cares about the products, who really cares about my why mission, and what's their personality, you know what I mean? So are they really compassionate people? Are they emotive people? If they're emotive people, they probably see the more emotive side of a color than the strength side of a color, you know, the more solid and tangible side of a color. So that's always worth considering as well, is how different people may perceive color. So all of these keywords on the screen right now, they all apply to this same red, but what one person might see, another person might not. So it's always worth considering as well. And then in terms of your competition, Nick just dropped in the chat that I should be careful with my rambling as a reminder. Competition, right? Yes, colors mean things. So what you'll often see is you'll see a real estate agent, and you see so much blue when it comes to real estate. Realestate.com, Domain, all of these brands that are really, really going back to your blues and greens, because they're colors that we consider to be trustworthy and competent. And it's trying to, I guess, trick that psychology of thinking that real estate agents might not be dodgy. Not that all of them are. There's heaps of really good real estate agents, but it's creating that kind of psychology behind real estate. But then that's not always what you want to do, right? Because it's important to stick out from your competition. So if you've got, you know, 90% of the real estate agents and all their branding is blue, do you really want to do a blue branding to go along, or are you going to just sit in the competition? So it's finding that balance between still standing out, differentiating from your competition, I suppose, but still making sure that the colors and the tones that you use still create that psychological connection with what your users really care about as well. So the example I wanted to show you guys was purple bricks. I'm pretty sure they're not the best business, but they were, I guess, perceived to be really innovative, really fresh, really new. And that's because they went completely off brand by going totally purple. And purple, we know, creates all of those emotions that make things look innovative and stylish and all of those things. So when everyone else is zagging, basically zig, or zag when everyone zigs, whichever way you want to go about it. But you don't always have to follow the same color tones as everyone else if you want to stand out and make it a bit of a difference. So that's a bit about colors. And it's really worth thinking about when you are thinking about the colors that you want to choose. What personality are you trying to exude for your color tones and your color theme? What story are you trying to tell, basically? What colors are going to give you a competitive advantage over your competitors? And what are your audience groups? What are the people that really, really want to work with you in your business, and the people that you want to work with? What aligns with them? You know, you've got to show up in the space that they live in as well as aligning with your own brand vision. So that's my ramble about colors. Does everyone have any questions? Nick has sent me a question. So are there any risks associated with undergoing a rebrand, such as loss of recognition? That's a super good question. Most definitely, I think it really depends on where your brand is at. So if this makes sense, so if your brand is at a position where, I mean, Damo knows a lot about this as well, but if you're not really being represented for your branding anymore, if your business is at a different level and it no longer aligns, I think it's always worth rebranding, because you don't really want to carry on in the same position as what you're currently sitting in, especially if you want to grow and especially if you want to reach the purpose that you're really trying to drive to for your branding. There can be ways that you can still tie in your existing brand while not necessarily completely changing everything. You can still have that recognition while still invoking some of those feelings and some of the strategy that you've put together to try and, I guess, tilt more towards your target audience. We've recently rebranded from a fox to another fox, so people still know that it's a fox, and we still have that recognition of our brand behind us, but our new brand more closely aligns with our target audience, which are people that really want to be in a community and be connected and things like that. So you can have the best of both worlds. I think you just have to be a bit strategic about the way that you roll that out. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Damo, at all.
No, absolutely well said. I think if you're repositioning yourself, it would be wise to reassess your values and therefore what position you would take in the market based on that opportunity. So I agree with you, Terry.
Awesome. And another question was, are there any good resources for exploring colors and what works well? So we actually have a blog on our website that goes over a bunch of tools that you can use. One of them is called Coolers, and basically it'll help you create some matching color tones and things like that. You can base around an existing color that you really want to stick with, so your main color, and it can help you explore some of those colors a little bit more. I can also send you guys, and I will send you guys some of the color psychology things as well, so you can have a little bit of an explore, and you can see some brands that have done that really well as well, just to base that from. And another question was, what happens if names and colors don't align? Such as if Purple Bricks was a red logo, Red Rooster was a white chicken. That's a very good question. I think it would create a little bit of confusion through the branding. Honestly, I think it's really important that if you're gonna throw colors into your name, that you don't misalign it with whatever it is that you're actually trying to visually represent as well. So I think you'll just create a little bit of confusion. Basically, when it comes to anything business or brand related, you really want people to understand what you do really quickly and really easily. And if you're creating confusion right off the bat by having a white chicken when you're supposed to be a red rooster, it might not go that well. So okay, yeah, but these are things that you can work out by doing a bit of strategy around these things as well. Oh, bye Vicky, sorry, I just saw your message. And I think if you have the right strategy behind you, you can find a name that really aligns with what you're trying to produce as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, so the question that was from Phil as well, it's definitely something that you can work out by doing a little bit of strategy yourself and going through what you want to represent, and then figuring out what brand name, if you are renaming, working out a name that really deeply aligns with that, if that's what Nick is talking about. Cool. All right, I'm going to carry forth. And then the next stage that we're going to talk about is typography, which is all about fonts and how that relates visually and what people see when they see those things as well. So the ones that you're probably most familiar with is your Serif Fonts, which is the things with the little ticks. You could see it as a bit of an anchor to your text. And what we think of when we see those types of fonts is, you know, tradition and trustworthiness and sophistication. It's kind of like the Times New Roman, you know, there's some real professionalism behind it, right? So you'll see that for a lot of professional services, for example. And then you have your sans serif fonts, and these are the really, really modern fonts. They're more if you're trying to look a little bit more innovative, a little bit more minimal and clean. And they're becoming more and more popular with all the startups that are coming up around as well. And then if you want to explore some other fonts for your branding, you can go more into script fonts, which are all about elegance, affection, a bit of creativity, a bit of flair. And then your display fonts, which are really, like, I love a good display font because it's really unique and punchy and extremely expressive as well. And you see a lot of like really big brands coming out with that kind of typography now as well. And so these really tie into what you want to be perceived as. So choosing the right font is extremely important. And just us as designers, if we're doing a brand, it takes so long to figure out what font we're going to use. It's one of the longest processes, I would say, out of all of it, because it really does relay the perception that you want people to have when they look at your brand. So this is a good example. So Tiffany & Co, these guys have been around for like 100 years or something like that, for a really long time. And when we look at their branding, we immediately think sophistication, right? Like they're so high end, they're traditional in the fact that they're a really old company that have a really good name to them. And I don't think they're going to be changing their logo, to be honest. It works really well for them because it does relay all of those emotions.
Just on that, Terry, so just as you go, and they've also painted their color teal. So no other corporate brand in the world can use that color because they own that.
Oh, they patented it.
They've painted it. It's Tiffany green.
That is very cool. Yeah. Man, all of the colors will be painted in eventually.
Yeah.
Be a weird world. Yeah, like that as well. I guess it's the same as Coca-Cola, right? They've patented their red. Is it Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
And Cadbury. You can't use that same color purple either. And that is true brand recognition. As soon as you see that purple, you're going to know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And you want to create that for people as well. And if we look at Airbnb as an example, they're the opposite side. They're super innovative. They're pretty much the only platform that does what they do. They're all about modern, all of their branding, all their visual identity, everything they do online, all reflects this exact same uber modern, really sleek and clean kind of brand identity that they've created for themselves as well. So it suits the purpose of their business, right? It really aligns with what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to be perceived as. And does anyone have any questions? Do you have any examples of successful display fonts?
Maybe reference Google Fonts, stuff like that, where you can find.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't have any slides, obviously.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Sorry, someone asked if I had any examples of successful display fonts. Oh my Lord, I could probably think of something in like an hour, which I can send through to you if I know who's actually asked. But some good examples, if you went on to Google Fonts, there is actually, you can break down to categories and stuff like that, so that you can look at what kind of really cool fonts I've got on there. They're all free fonts as well on Google Fonts. Google is God. So have a look through there. Damo, can you think of any display fonts? Why is my brain blanking?
Oh, look, Tiffany, I thought was an exceptionally good example. It's traditional, as you mentioned. And I thought the Airbnb one was very good because it does speak exactly to innovative modern positioning. So I think it hits core to their strategy.
Yeah. I just got given a display font, guys. Walt Disney.
Oh yeah.
That is a wacky-do font, right? It sticks in your mind, and whenever you see that font, you know what it is. The same as Star Wars and stuff, right? I mean, it's not a business, but as soon as anyone uses that font, you're like, you're just trying to rip off Star Wars, guys. Come on. All right. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to chuck it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just carry on with my rambling. All right. And then we're going to translating that strategy into imagery as well. So imagery really just backs up what we're talking about for our fonts and colors. And I'll show you a couple of examples. So Apple, the coolest. I'm going to send you guys a video which shows you these really old ads that Apple did that so perfectly outlines the way that they strategically place themselves against everyone else. And one of the things is that they've got this black and white brand, which is all about, as we talked about earlier, sophistication, sleekness, authority, and they are authoritative in their industry. The absolute powerhouse guns. And all of their imagery reflects that as well. They've got, it's really, really clean. They've used the black really well. It's a really good example of extremely good branding. Oh, wrong way. Whole Foods, again, which we talked about earlier as well, their imagery perfectly reflects the things I was just talking about, where it's really wholesome. It's not manicured at all. It's very natural and organic. All of their photography perfectly reflects the brand that they've created. And that's that consistency that we're talking about, right? And then Coke, with their iconic red, is all of their ads perfectly summarizes what they've created as a brand. And that's that red, those keywords that we were talking about, which is all about love, energy and excitement, right? And so all of their ads, you'll either see that they're creating this sense of connection, whether it's to one another as friends or to a loved one, you know, that you're dating or whatever it is. Or on the other hand, they'll just be doing parties, like going out in the bloody ocean doing flips and stuff, right? So it's all about that energy and the sense of love and connection that they create, and they're the main two things that they ever advertise around, and that shows a really good positioning in terms of their branding as well. See, I managed to get through that bit quick.
No questions.
All right, no questions. Let's carry on in the right direction. So we'll do a bit around shapes and forms as well. So we looked at Whole Foods and that logo, and that's a round form. And when we think about rounded objects, we generally think about, I guess, like a bit of warm and fuzzy, right? So it's all about community, unity. There's a sense of universal sense of love. And also people use it for like badges. So it's like a badge of honor when people are wearing or using those brandings. When we have a little bit more squared and straight off shapes, such as squares, there's a little bit more stability, a little bit more strength and professionalism around those. And when we think about triangles, which, you know, if you've got a triangle, it's really hard to knock over. So you think about the power, the dependency of that shape as well. So I'll show you some examples for those guys. So Starbucks is another awesome brand, and they've really set themselves up. They charge, honestly, like $10 for a coffee. And the only reason they can get away with that is because they've created this brand. I shouldn't say get away with it, sounds really negative, but they've created this really, really good brand where they have such a sense of community about their stores, and warmth and connection. And that's where you go when you want to catch up with people, right? And so this circular logo that they've created iconically represents that, and the colors even represent that really well as well. Whereas we've got Microsoft, the most boring brand. I hate the branding, but it's fine. What they do is really good because they're all about professionalism. They're not about the creative stuff. They're not about, you know, all of the Apple-based stuff. They're all about professionalism. They're all about making sure that everything works well, is balanced, it's stable, and it's strong. And that's kind of the brand that they've created using those squares. And then Mitsubishi have done a really good triangular shape because it's all about dependency, and they've used that red color to just reinforce that idea as well, the emotions behind that. So you've got, you know, the power and the strength that comes through both from the red and also from the shape, the form that they've used.
No questions so far.
I'm managing to get this through quite quickly now. Look at me. All right. And then let's go through like what's next, guys. Once you've got that strategy down, once you've kind of pin down what you want to represent visually as well, like your colors and your fonts and things, how do you then turn that into a brand? How do you turn that into a visual brand rather? So we go through and we do some exploration, and it could take ages, but it's fun. Like you get really excited about it. So a platform that we often use is called Pinterest, and I would definitely check it out. It's absolute mood board heaven. No matter what you're doing, whether you want to like find a cool outfit or whatever, it's so good for it. But yeah, so start finding brands that really relate and really connect back to the kind of visual elements that you really want to be portraying. Find some imagery that really relates to who you're talking to, what you want to represent, and just start compiling it all together. Once you've compiled it all together, it's going to be so easy to see the direction that you can head in to create the substance and the feeling behind what you want to be showcasing and presenting as. So once you've got all of your images all mood boarded together, we can then go and we can make that nice and concise, and we can draw it out into a overall direction board, I guess. So this is a Stylescope. We create these as a part of our branding, and the reason why we create them is it gives a really, really good, basically we curate all of the things that we just got from Pinterest, and we put it all together in a way that is super aligned, both color-wise, typography-wise, image style, you know, your icons that you want to use, the kind of collateral that inspires you and stuff like that. And by curating that content, it will give you a completely perfect jumping off point to then create your logo and then create the branding that sits behind that, the collateral, all of the rest of it basically. So this is what we do. And we'll probably start creating some content around that so that you guys get to know that kind of process a little bit better, because it's really, really, really important and it's very valuable. So once you've done that, you'll be able to create the thing, make it look amazing, make it super aligned with who you are. And then most importantly, you'll be able to make that really align across all your platforms. So I'm talking like your website, your print collateral, your social media, everything, which leads me to my mostly final point, which is all about structure. Create some rules around it. There's nothing worse than when people have this beautiful brand and then they post something on social media that has a different font or different colors or whatever it is to promote something about their business. What it does is when you're not brand consistent, you're losing a bit of trust when you do that, when you break your brand consistency, because it shows a little bit of unreliability. And it's really important that we have structure around what we're doing, because you're not going to get that recognition. Otherwise, you're not going to get that, you know, top to bottom, side to side brand recognition where people see your logo, people see your colors, people see whatever it is, that they know that that's you. So the way that we as designers do this is we create brand guidelines. And this is basically your rules. So this is also great because you can send it on to someone that does design. You can send it on to a marketer, or you can use it internally with your team, and it draws kind of a box around what you can and cannot do, which sounds limiting, but what it does mean is that whatever you create is going to be so on brand that people are going to recognize you immediately, and you're going to be able to start building up that recognition. So this is what it might include. So I've just taken a couple of pieces from one of our recent ones that we've done. So you figure out how much space you're going to put around your logos to make sure that it always looks really clean and stands out against your content. You figure out what your collateral might look like, which is your business cards, your flyers, your social medias, your signage, all of that jazz, what that kind of looks like so that you know going forward how you're going to roll that out. What are your icons? How do they look? What style is that in? So that anytime you're using an icon, it's always consistent. And then the do's and don'ts of your branding. So sometimes you'll see people stretch their logos and it hurts my heart, guys. Don't do it. Honestly, I know it's unintentional, but it makes me sad. So just, you know, identifying some definitely don't do this thing around your branding is really good, especially when you're relying on other people to design for you, or you've got someone working in-house that will design your ads and stuff like that for you as well. Make sure you got all your colors, exactly what colors you use down to your color tones and stuff like that. That's great when you're working with printers to make sure that when you're getting printing done, it's all consistent. Making sure your typefaces are all, you know, this is what we use for body, this is what we use for headings, this is what we use for subtitles, making sure that that's always consistent. And then in terms of your imagery as well, what kind of imagery, when you're looking for imagery, what kind of photos do I need to inspire? Like what kind of feelings do I need to inspire for these photos? And there, I mean, that's just really recapping on what I've exactly spoken about, but by creating rules around this, it means that you're going to get consistent with everything. And it's extremely important that you do, because it's all about creating that recognition, and everything is about perception. And if you're not being consistent, then you're not living to that strategy and you're not really living to your brand. So that is my absolute piece of advice to you guys. And now we have question time, and I actually have some questions, which is fabulous. if anyone has any additional questions, we're pretty much reaching to the end of it. So please feel free to chuck it in the chat. All right, so how often should a company have a review of their logo and branding? So what I would say is that as a business, you should really be checking in on your alignment at least once a year to see if your branding really aligns with what you're trying to do with your business, what your vision is. And that is really the review. It's not necessarily about, is my logo shit now? It's more about, does my logo represent what I need it to represent? When it comes to websites and stuff like that, we always recommend once every 3 years having a really good review of those things, because things do change, design elements do change. And if you've been in business 10 years, 100% you should have a review of what you're doing, whether it aligns with where you want to go. Because as we know, through COVID, through just general life, that we're constantly changing our trajectory, changing what we really want to achieve. And that's whether that's personal or, you know, for our business as well. So we've got another question.
Good answer.
Okay, thanks. Do you have any recommendations for programs or software to use while playing around with visuals like colors and text? Canva's great. Canva's great because it's free, and there are actually a tremendous amount of fonts on there you can have a play around with if you're just looking for something that's totally free. We use a software called... Sorry?
Oh, sorry, I just chimed in and said Australian founded, international global sensation, started right here in Australia, so plug it.
Yeah.
Get around Canva.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And then if you do pay for a pro account for Canva as well, you can load in all your fonts and stuff like that as well. That way, if you're not like a design whiz, you can still design brand consistent things on Canva as well. So that's really helpful just as an overall business tool. Otherwise, we use a program called Adobe Xd, which is free, even though Adobe products are notoriously expensive. This is the one product that they do have that's actually free. So we use that all the time, and that's you can get that from their website, and it's a really easy to use software. It's not like Photoshop where you've got 10 million buttons. I'm not really sure if I need to rebrand. Are there any key indicators to help determine if I do? Damon, did you have any insights that you wanted to relay to that?
Yeah, again, a really good question. I think it comes back to your strategic objectives and what you're trying to achieve. I mean, personally, we look at that quarterly because we want to keep our finger on the pulse. And I think if you can analyze very, very succinctly what your objectives are, you'll be able to put the rebranding question in its right place or view it through its right lens. If you, for example, if you're trying to appeal to a new audience segment or a new customer, and you're able to do that with your current brand, but just change some slight messaging, then that achieves the function. If you want to appeal to a whole different sector or a whole different audience group for a whole different set of reasons, we might need to look at rebranding to speak to them. It's generally opportunity and opportunity costs. So that's the way I'd look at that.
Definitely, like messaging is so important as well. So people underestimate what you can do just by changing your messaging and making sure that that aligns with your overall core purpose and messaging as well. Has a lot of power. As well, in terms of like visually, again, go back to just constantly check in with where you're at in your business. I think it's really important. I think as business owners, honestly, you get so busy, right? Like, it's just me. It's so hard to work on your own business, but it's so important that we do, like having even just biannually check-ins on, are we on the trajectory that we want to be on to get to our vision? Doing those check-ins are so important in terms of figuring out if there is anything that we need to change and things like that as well. And then obviously, of course, you can always ask for advice from anyone such as ourselves. I absolutely pride myself on not telling bullshit to people, and if you don't need a rebrand, I won't tell you to do it, I promise. So and then we've got, how do we create consistency with what you post on social media if there's more than one person in your business posting? Super good question, Maddie. Templating. So Canva. So something that we do when we're doing rebrands is, or just from scratch branding, is oftentimes we'll create social media templates for people, and we actually do that in Canva as a free product. If they need their custom fonts on there, which oftentimes they will, you may have to pay like, I don't know how much Canva Pro is. I think it's like $9 a month. Honestly, it's absolutely nothing, but you can create templates, and then all you need to do every time someone needs to post is just change the words and change the image, and then it's still consistent, and you won't have that issue where people will just be creating their own random things. So normally you'd create like 15, 16 or so templates, and that way you're always keeping your content fresh. It always looks really nice and good. Nick is currently looking up the price.
It's $18 a month, I think, up to 5 people.
Okay, $18 a month for up to 5 people, which I think is a very decent amount of, I shouldn't say decent amount of money. It's not very much considering what you're getting is what I'm saying. So you can load in all your brand colors so that when you go to do your color picker, it tells you exactly what colors you can use and stuff like that. So that's ideal for when you've got a bunch of people updating the same stuff, because then you won't get people creating their own random assortment of things. Hopefully. Sorry?
The guidelines help with that as well. Consistency.
Oh yeah, the guidelines help with that as well. If you do have brand style guides and guidelines, people should always be referencing back to that, making sure that it aligns. And then on top of that, if it is a genuine concern, you're still worried about it, I would have you as a business owner just review everything before it goes out, if possible as well. But hopefully, if everyone's on the same page, if everyone knows what to do and what not to do, and there's a bit of structure around it, you know, you should be all right. Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions before we carry on?
Not that I can see.
All right. Cool. All right. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully that was really helpful. If you do have any questions, I'm going to send out a bunch of resources after this as well. But if you do have any questions at all that you want to ask, you know, straight to us, please email us. We've got our contact details on the next slide, I think. But also, as you would have noticed when we were doing the whole registration, all that fun jazz, is that we're letting people donate if they wanted to, and we've received over $100 in donations, which is going to go directly to Skylight. So I just want to thank you guys so much for doing that. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
They're a local non-for-profit, and they do really amazing work with supporting people who are going through mental illness or families who are caring for them. And we want to make sure that all of our webinars coming up are all supporting charities like this, or this charity specifically. So oh, Maddie, is there a way that we can still donate? Yeah, so you can either visit their website and donate directly to them, or if you want to go into the pool of what we're donating all as one large fund, can you drop the link to the page, to our webinar page? Yeah, cool. Yes. So just giving directions. Yeah, so Nick is going to drop the link to our page as well in the chat. So if you did want to visit that, then you can donate that way. It'll just like put you in as a registration, but you're already a participant anyway, so it doesn't matter. So yeah. Yay, thank you guys. So these are Damien's details and myself. Please reach out if you have absolutely any questions. I will also be sending everyone an email on our upcoming webinars as well when we figure out what we're doing, and they're all going to be really closely related. So I think the next one's about target audiences and how to find those, how to create your message around that, and again, so that it can be brand consistent as well. Yay. Thank you guys. Thanks for all the positive feedback as well. Can I actually ask you guys a question? Some feedback. Would you prefer if I did this early in the day next time? And what time is a good time? I would love if people could tell me. I just want to make sure that it actually works for people. Mid-morning? Sweet. Thank you, Maddie. I might do a mid-morning thing as well, so everyone's brains are on board as well, because I know that in the afternoon we're like on the way towards getting our pajamas basically. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Damon, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, thanks for participating in today's session, guys, and thanks Terry and the team for putting it together. Fantastic initiative. Proud to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damon. I knew you'd want to be on board. He said yes straight away, by the way, guys. So it's one to be
Thanks,
watched.
Terry.
Awesome. All right, I think do a pajama one. All right, we may do an after hours pajama party one. Maybe that should be our last one. You know, leading into Christmas, we'll do a wine and jammies webinar. Onesies, love it. Sweet. All right, we will get off, and I will be sending you guys a recording of this as well, so that you can rewatch it. You can go through the slides and stuff as well. And thank you guys again. Thank you, Damo, again. Thanks, Nick, for slacking me messages.
Thanks, guys.
Adios.